Fred was already with RSF and had been for some time when I joined in 2019. So he was really one of the first people that I met when I interviewed for the position. And after I assumed the role, Fred was just kind of at the heart of everything that RSF has done since I've been here. He was our treasurer. He was at every meeting. He wrote for us all the time. And he was the person when there was something in the news that we needed a board member to kind of translate into Georgism or analyze it from a Georgist perspective. Fred was one of our go-tos because he could do that so easily, and he was so generous with his time and his intellect.
I first met Fred, probably 20 years ago. He was a speaker at a Georgist conference.
Fred was a prolific writer, and I first became aware of him in the late 90s through his writing online at sites like progress.org. I had recently learned about Henry George and read many of Fred's articles as I learned about this new paradigm for justice and growth.
He's a tremendous writer, tremendous thinker, one of our brightest Georgists.
Fred came east to participate in a book launch at the University of Scranton in 2018 for the annotated works of Henry George, Volume 3, Social Problems. I knew that his talk was to be on earth as it is in heaven. To my surprise, though, he didn't follow the version I'd seen on his website, which I had found quite beautiful and looked forward to hearing him present. Instead, he used a PowerPoint that followed the Lord's Prayer that concentrated on the economics. It had just 14 slides. Its first slide provides the link to the talk I'd expected to hear. They're both wonderful, and they could very well have been presented side by side.
He's a great writer. One of the things that I received from him was the ultimate tax reform, and many people have found that to be very helpful in understanding what RSF and Georgists hope to accomplish.
I would say that Fred was soft-spoken, but incredibly perceptive, extremely intelligent, and really provided a lot of insights into Georgism and did it in a way that made it accessible to everybody.
I've known Fred Foldvary for, probably 15 years, and never a better fellow you ever want to meet.
What really inspired me about Fred was how he could cut through that, really come up with solutions that weren't part of the conversation before, but really made a lot of sense. I feel like that's a hugely overly rare talent in the world we live in, is being able to think that way, think outside of what everybody else is saying.
I came to appreciate his dedication and his insight, especially when he was elected treasurer. He kept his eye on our bottom line during the economic crisis of the pandemic, and the foundation will always owe him a debt for that service.
In 2009, I prevailed upon the board to authorize a contract with a computer artist to create graphics of selected Georgist ideas. I turned to Fred to make rough sketches from which the artist could work. He and I later incorporated them into PowerPoints, which I often used in talks to various audiences, and he used them in his teaching. One of the designs was used on the cover of his book, The Science of Economics.
I met Fred primarily through the Robert Schalkenbach Foundation. We were board members together, so most of my interactions with him were through meetings there. And what really stood out to me, both in those meetings as well as just his other comments and some of his scholarship that I read, was his willingness to think outside the box.
Fred was my mentor, my PhD supervisor, but above all, he was a great friend.
Once when I was checking into a hotel and Fred was chatting with someone, and they asked him, well, what do you do for a living? Well, I'm an economist. And then they said, well, what kind? Who do you follow? And he said, oh, I'm an Austrian. And my wife heard that, and she thought that he was actually from Austria. And so then I started just thinking of Fred as our own Austrian-Hungarian economist.
The greatest memory I have of Fred and Gloria is when they came to Italy for my PhD dissertation and for some conference I have organized for him. And we spent a wonderful week visiting Italian cities, Verona, Milan, Turin, and but above all, we spent most of time eating and drinking Italian and Italian food and wines. So it was a great time.
Thank you for your contributions to the foundation and to our vision of a world of justice and liberty. You will be missed.
Fred's passing is really a loss for RSF and for many other people beyond our organization as well.
Everyone will for many years remember Fred as a leading light in our movement.
Fred was a great loss, I think, not only for me, but for many people. And thank you, Fred, for everything, and we will never forget you.
If there were no scarce resources, there would be no economics. We could have everything we want for free. So if heaven has an economy, there has to be some scarcity. There has to be some scarce resources. Here on earth, our time is a scarce resource because human beings are mortal. We have a finite lifespan, but economics does not require mortality. There can still be an economy if heavenly beings live forever.